This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates in central Iowa companies.
Amplified.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining another episode of Mav Talk. Today, we have a special guest mix, Mr. Nik Heftman.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Great, man. Great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Before we get into the interview, it's going to be a great interview, by the way. But before we get into that, I'm going to first break down my company, Do the Mav 24/7. Do the Mav 24/7 is a positive message on respect, unity, and equality. There are several different ways in which we spread our positive message. We have a school character building program. We have a anti-bullying program. We have a podcast, which is the Mav Talk podcast. We have action figures, and we also have an apparel line. Do the Mav 24/7's positive message is broken down into 5 basic math symbols. So for add kindness, add inclusion. For subtract bullying, subtract injustice. For multiply love, multiply understanding. For divide is indivisible. Even though we're divided at times, we're ultimately stronger, unified as a people, as a community. Equal stands for equality, and 24/7 stands for all the time. So do the Mav 24/7. Again, thank you for joining us for Mav Talk. And now we have Mr. Nik Heftman. How you doing again?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Again, thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Kind of a short notice, but I'm glad that we got to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that I got to learn more about what you do. I mean, your work is very inspiring and it's needed.
Thank you. So one thing about Nik, I'm just going to get a little background about Nik. Nik is he's an Emmy Award winner. I first want to mention that. He is a filmmaker. He is a journalist. He was working at CBS News, but now he has his own companies called The 7 Times, which is a platform uplifting Black communities. He's worked in the past as an editor, as a writer, as a film producer, and for magazine companies, for newspapers, as well as national TV broadcast companies. So, man, you've done a lot in a short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a grind, but it's been very rewarding.
Yes. And just a little background as far as how Nik and I met. So, one day I was scrolling on either Instagram or Facebook, and one of your ads came up for a film that his most recent film, which is called The Negro Artist, which we're going to get into later. But, I was very intrigued as far as I wanted to see the film. I'm definitely a huge fan of indie films. And, being an African-American, I definitely want to make sure I support you as well. And, I was really intrigued as far as the name, The Negro Artist. And then I started to, do a little research on you and kind of did some background work, research and, found out, the different things you've done in the past. And now I was like, you know what? I'm going to definitely go to see the film when it was in Des Moines, which was probably about a month ago. I said, but also I want to meet you. And, I wanted to make sure that I reached out to you. And, and that's something that I try to do more and more is just to be very intentional with different things. I didn't hold back. I'm like, you know what, got on Instagram, and I just start to send you a message like, hey, I'm going to be at your film, your premiere showing of The Negro Artist in Des Moines, but also I'm going to meet with you for coffee. So we ended up meeting that very next day. We had great conversation, and it was great just to learn, just a little bit more about you. Went to the film. One thing I could say about the film, it was definitely an experience. That's one word that kind of stuck out about his film, The Negro Artist, is an experience. When you go into it, before it starts, there's live music, very chill setting. There's poetry, spoken word, with some national artists, poets that are pretty well known in the state and nationally, as part of your team that does that. And you had a great Q&A session. And then also now you have your own workshops, right? Storytelling workshop, which we're going to talk about that, more in the past. Later on. But, that's something for me that really stood out, as far as everything that you're doing. And, again, thanks for being on the show. But my first question to you is, looking at your resume, what made you, have the drive as far as broadcasting, as far as journalism? Like, how did you choose that path? Where did it start? Let's just say that.
So yeah, I was just very lucky to have the parents I did that exposed me to a lot of different types of media at a young age, and a lot of it had to do with race and important issues in the community. And reading and writing was always my thing. I mean, I was just always really good at it. When I was in 6th grade, I had a 12th grade reading level, and I was reading books that, you know, my classmates were not reading as I was growing up. And in high school, I had teachers that really encouraged me. They always told me I was a gifted writer. And it wasn't until college that I decided to really take it seriously. That's when I learned that, A, I could make a living telling stories, but B, I could also make a tangible impact with the storytelling through journalism. So that's kind of how I made my way into storytelling, and then into, you know, being a broadcast journalist. That just ended up being my first job out of college. I mean, when I was in college, I was focusing on long form writing. You know, I was doing the newspapers, doing the magazines, but I was really fortunate to have the opportunity I did to move to New York right out of college and jump right into a morning show, CBS Mornings, where I had to learn a lot real fast and get real good at my job real fast. But it was a great challenge, and I learned a ton.
Wow, that's awesome. Right out of college.
Right out of college.
Right out of college, moving to NYC.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what do you believe makes a powerful and impactful story?
So what makes an impactful story is, first off, you got to have a compelling reason why. And, you know, it has to be compelling to you first. So if it's not compelling to you and not important to you, then, you know, it's not going to be important to others, and you're not going to work as hard on that story in the first place. So it's got to be important to you first, and then from there, you know, you should develop the idea and make it compelling to others. Secondly, you got to have great characters. I mean, your characters make or break the story. Characters that can speak to the issue or to the central subject of your story. Lastly, you have to be able to tell the story in a concise way, and that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be short, but make sure that every piece of information, every soundbite you pick, everything you write is moving the story at all times. That's how you keep people engaged, and that's how you don't lose them in the long run. So, you know, having a compelling why, picking the right characters, and lastly, making your story as concise as possible.
That's good info. That's really good info. You know, and especially for businesses out there, just with their own marketing, right? Because that's kind of the thing now. You got to tell your story, right? You're telling a story. When you're marketing, you're telling a story, you know, and it has to be compelling, you know. And sometimes with social media, you know, that story is only like 30 seconds or maybe probably even 10 seconds now, but you're telling that story. So, I mean, that's really good info. You know, even for myself, I need to, you know, make sure that, you know, kind of fit to a format like that. Because you want to make sure that you captivate people's attention, even if it's just for a short period of time. So, you know, thank you for sharing that. Now, you've worked in newspaper, magazine, as well as national television. How has each medium shaped your approach to reporting?
Yeah, I mean, when I started working at newspapers, that was when I learned about the impact of journalism. I mean, I worked for my internship in college, I worked at a small town paper in Carroll, Iowa called the Daily Times Herald.
Shout out to Carroll, Iowa.
Yeah, and when I worked at that paper, I mean, you know, in local rural communities, the journalists and the people down you know, you're a rock star in the community. You know, everybody knows you and everybody wants you to come cover their stories, and then they look forward to reading your bylines in the paper. So, you know, working in newspapers, and especially in rural newspapers, I learned about the impact of journalism and how you can really create tangible change in people's lives. On the magazine front, I was doing that in college, and that was more like a creative inspiration for me. Right? That's where I kind of drew more into my creativity. There, you kind of had to customize your spread in a magazine, and you had a little more freedom on how you wanted to tell the story visually than you would, you know, confining to a newspaper. So from there, it was about, okay, how can I tell an important story in this magazine, but also how do I make it look cool?
Right.
And then third, I mean, with the broadcast journalism, it was, you know, in the case of working for a morning show, it was about being able to make quick decisions while also telling an accurate story. I mean, working for a morning show, I mean, the story changes. So, I mean, working on the morning show, I mean, you're working overnight on a story and it can change every minute, you know, or every 30 minutes, the important information can just change on you. And you got to be able to be quick-minded, quick-footed, and change direction, but also maintain the accuracy, maintain the compelling part of the story, and, you know, make sure you're respecting the characters too. So from there, in the broadcast part of it, I learned how to think quick on my feet as a journalist.
Wow. So you're saying that a story can literally just change, and you have a short period of time to literally dissect that
Yeah, I mean, it's not the ideal situation, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but
I
it
mean,
happens,
but
right?
it happens.
Because
It
news
happens.
is, right?
Yeah, news is the news. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, especially, you know, for me, I worked in the first hour of the show, and that's where you got those hard news stories, especially like national disasters, things like that, where the information was constantly changing. And again, it's being able to adjust on the fly, think quick on your feet, and still execute a great story.
Wow, that's awesome. And just to be able to experience that fresh out of college, right? You know, I'm sure that helped mold you as far as what you are today, as far as, you know, being quick on your feet, like you said, right? And dealing with so many different, you know, news and points of view, you know, and learning how to just navigate through that. So,
Yeah, I mean, being part of and being a broadcast producer, it's about, you know, you kind of have to learn how everything works. You don't have to be a master cameraman or something, but you got to know what the cameraman's doing and what he's working. It's like, you know, you got to know how, you know, the graphic artists work. You got to, you know, it's a big team effort. And that's another thing I learned about broadcast journalism is teamwork. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're not just one guy working on a story. You're working with the field team. You're working with your graphic artist. You're working with the camera crew. You're working with your executive producer at times. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it was all about teamwork and making the stories happen.
Okay, nice. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, you are a Emmy Award winner. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So if you don't mind, give us a little background as far as how did you receive that type of recognition?
Yeah, so while I was at CBS Mornings, our show, CBS Mornings won Outstanding Live News Broadcast. I worked on every single show that year, so I was able to get the Emmy that year along with my teammates on the show. And a big part of our submission for that award was the Derek Chauvin trial, you know, the police officer that murdered George Floyd. And me and a few colleagues worked on that story. That was our beat as it was going on.
Really? Okay.
And yeah, that was, real tough story for obvious reasons. But, I mean, it helped get us the Emmy. So.
Mm-hmm. That's good work.
No, thank you.
Yeah, congratulations on that. So what inspired you to transition from mainstream media to your company now, the 7 Times, which is, of course, is the platform to uplift black business owners?
Yeah, so after working at CBS for over 5 years, I mean, I started to think about what my next move was. I mean, I knew I didn't want to just be in the same spot forever. And it got to a point where, you know, I gained some confidence in my skills and I wanted to start to tell stories my way in ways that I thought were cool. And like I said, I mean, thanks to my parents and some other things I experienced growing up, I developed an interest in black history, black hidden history, but also just black stories in general. So as I began to develop my idea for what I wanted my next move to be, I knew that I wanted to tell black stories and I wanted to maintain that impactful part of journalism. So I kind of, you know, kicked around some ideas that fell upon the idea of the 7 Times.
Okay, nice. So how did that name come about, the 7 Times?
It comes from a theory in economics. When you spend money at a local business, it rolls over 7 times in that community. So my idea was to show people through a docuseries, is what I call it, how your money rolls over when you spend money at a black-owned business.
Wow.
And it's a black-owned business that has a physical location in the community. So I try to focus on brick-and-mortar businesses, though I made exceptions for some, you know, online businesses. But overall, I try to focus on brick-and-mortar businesses, people that you can go and meet in person or people that you'll see out in the street, you know, often enough.
That's awesome. So why do you think it's important to highlight, black-owned businesses in today's day and age, and as far as what's going on in society and whatnot? Why is it important for you to be one of the ones to highlight black businesses?
You know, even though I'm focusing on black stories and black entrepreneurs in particular, anybody can draw inspiration from these stories. It's just mostly, you know, when I thought about this idea, I was like, okay, I want to target the young black person or the young black kid and show them that, you know, they have options. There are services out there that'll help you follow your dreams. And you could take your passion and turn it into something that you could live off of. And you could be an entrepreneur based on that. And you could also make an impact in your community. A lot of the stories I did, like the scuba diving store that's on my website, he has a program where he tries to introduce young students of color to scuba diving and the careers that come with that. So there's always some sort of community angle to my stories. So really it's to show people of all ages and all races, you know, that might be thinking about their next step or might be young enough to where they're still deciding what they want to do for a career. It's to show them that, hey, you can take what you're passionate about and make it into a career. And again, and use your career to make a difference in the community. And then again, I'm trying to show the broader audience where their money is going, where they're spending money at a Black-owned business, and why Black entrepreneurs are pillars in their communities.
Mm-hmm. That's good that you mentioned that. And I'm kind of thinking about how this month is Black History Month. And, we're going to be at an elementary school later this month, King Elementary, doing an assembly for King Elementary. And, just thinking about Black history, what comes to mind is, even though it's Black history, but we all can be inspired, right? Mm-hmm. We all can be inspired. So that just kind of ties in what you mentioned as far as, so even though, your business is, is dedicated to impacting, or highlighting Black-owned businesses, but everyone can learn from it. Everyone can be inspired. It's inspiration, regardless of it being from, Black business and whatnot. So that's awesome. That, just in general, sometimes in the media, I think that, Blacks are, portrayed as if only African Americans can be inspired by their story, right? As far as their company and what they're doing, what they've done. But we can all be inspired, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We could all be inspired. And then if you watch my stories, I mean, my series is not about the plight of the Black experience. It's about just, hey, these are Black entrepreneurs. These are the realities of what it is to be a Black entrepreneur in the United States, period. Mm-hmm. And you can learn from, and a lot of the things that we go through as Black entrepreneurs are things that every entrepreneur goes through.
Right.
It might look a little different for us at times, but again, everybody can draw inspiration from these stories. Right. Everybody from any point in their life, even if they're trying to switch a career, or if they're, do I want to go to community college? Okay, well, what could that help me with? I mean, my first partner was DMAC and the Evelyn K. Davis Center. And part of that partnership was highlighting some of the services that they've offered and some of the Black entrepreneurs that they've helped. And so again, I was, the hope with that was somebody seeing that video and saying, hey, okay, I can go back to school and I can be an entrepreneur, and there are resources out there to help me. Yeah. I don't have to struggle to do it. Right. There's always this weird thing about struggling and grinding. It's like, it doesn't always have to be that way. There's an element of that, but it doesn't have to be that way all the time.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes it's perception too.
Yeah, it's perception, and a lot of it is programming too.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people, might be programmed into thinking, okay, I have to go to school to be an entrepreneur, or a lot of people might think, hey, I have to go to school to reach my goals, or I have to go this path to reach my goals. And again, the whole point of my series is to show people who are, trying to figure it out. It's like, hey, entrepreneurship is an option, and this is what it can look like for you.
It's what it can look like.
And you could be ready. You can know what to expect. You take a peek at one of my videos, and hopefully, you can see, okay, this is what they're going through. But, hey, they did it. I could do it too.
Yeah, definitely universal. So, thank you for sharing that. So what are your goals as far as the 7 times? What do you see it, growing as or growing to?
So, what I would like to do with the 7 times is develop the series a little more, make the videos a little longer, and go a little more in depth with the stories. I mean, my film, The Negro Artist, that was my first step into that, was kind of telling a story about a Black entrepreneur, and in this case also a Black artist, and going more in depth with it. So with these stories, I kind of want to expand them, make them more in depth, make them a little bit longer, and also expand my reach, go into more states, visit more entrepreneurs. And another part of the 7 times series is a written series. I've had students visit Black entrepreneurs and write stories about them. So also expanding that part of it too. So really expanding the platform, making it a multifaceted, multimedia platform that includes these stories that are a little more in depth, a little more produced, and, with that, a little more inspirational too.
A little more. Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about The Negro Artist. Great film, by the way. Great film. I definitely enjoyed it. Great documentary. You got a great response when I was there. I mean, I kind of talked to some people, a little afterward. I mean, everyone enjoyed it. It was just, it was definitely a great film. Without really going into it, give me like a sneak peek. Give the audience a sneak peek of what can they expect from that film.
Yeah, so The Negro Artist is a journey into the world of Caleb Rainey, who is professionally known as The Negro Artist. He's a young Black spoken word poet. He got his creative roots in Iowa City at the University of Iowa, But I mean, he's on the rise, and he's on the rise, and he's rapidly rising. And he also does a lot of work in the community. What people will get is the story of Caleb and some of the things he's overcome to become the great poet that he is now. Mm-hmm. They're going to hear the truth about Caleb, but his truth is a shared truth among a lot of us. And that's one of the things that drew me to him in the first place. But what also people will see from the film is the power of poetry and how it create tangible change in people's lives.
Okay. And what do you want the audience to get from watching your film?
The main message I've been saying, I think, at all our screenings is that you don't have to be anybody in the film to make the world a better place. You know, I mean, you don't have to be Caleb or any of the other characters who are also doing great things in their communities to make the world a better place. You can use your art, your skill, your talent to make someone else's life better, and there's no excuse as to why you can't. So that's the main takeaway of the film. But overall, the film is a celebration of blackness, of course. I mean, Caleb is a black poet, but it's also a celebration of the creative arts and the power of the creative arts and how they can literally, you know, move things in society in a positive way.
You know, one thing I mentioned as far as at the beginning of the show was when I went to see the Negro artist, it was an experience. You know, there was live music, right? Really good live music. There was poetry readings. You know, of course, the Q&A. You know, it was definitely a great experience, and I wasn't used to seeing that, you know, going to a screening. So I thought that was very creative. You know, the next day, you know, over coffee, we were kind of talking about that. Yeah. I'm like, man, I like how you kind of doing it like that. And, you know, but now you also have another piece, which is the storytelling workshop. Mm-hmm. So you have the film, you have the live music session, right? You have the poetry, and now you have the workshop storytelling. You mind kind of touching on that, or how did that all come about?
Yeah, so the Negro Artist Film Experience is something that we've just been growing and developing over time. I mean, it started off as the film screenings and the Q&A, but I wanted people to have the opportunity to hear Caleb speak in person. Because the whole point of the film, the way I show the poetry in the film, I wanted people to be introduced to poetry the same way I was. So like you probably, I mean, how often do you go to a poetry slam? You know, not very often. And for me in my life, I was not, you know, before I met Caleb, I had not gone to spoken word poetry performances. I wasn't really into poetry like that. And I had not been introduced to the art form properly. And when I heard Caleb speak, I was like, wow, this is extremely powerful. So I try to mimic my own experience. And what it was like for me to hear it for the first time in person for others. So that's where the spoken word part of it comes. But like I said, the Negro Artist Film Experience, it includes the film screening. We usually started off with a performance and music. Again, trying to introduce people to Caleb, who he really is, and to showcase his talent in that way. Because it's way different seeing it in person than seeing it on the screen. I mean, when you see it in person, you see Caleb literally move the room when he speaks.
Right.
You know, I mean, no one's on their phone. Everybody's completely dialed in, and that's not something you can fake. You can't fake that kind of power. Mm-mm. So it's important to show people that in person. So that's a part of it. And then we do the film screening, and then we do the Q&A, and those have actually become more of a discussion. Those are actually very popular. I mean, people stay for over an hour after the film just to discuss the elements of the film, but also to meet me and to meet Caleb and get to know us, to see what we're doing. And then, yeah, the workshop thing is something that we're still developing. Caleb, before the film was even out, he does a poetry workshop. So that's something that we've added to the film experience at times. Mm-hmm. But that's developing even more so to include other aspects of storytelling. So storytelling and poetry, it's also, for me, it's storytelling and entrepreneurship. There's a little bit in there about poetry and how it can help you heal from trauma. I mean, we're constantly developing the workshop and curating it to whatever audience that we're going to be in front of.
Okay. So where you see it going as far as this whole experience, the Negro Artist Film Experience, where you see it going? Yeah,
we're trying to take it worldwide. We're trying to take the Negro Artist Film Experience worldwide to big cities and to rural communities. That's also very important. I mean, we've been in California, got standing ovations there. We just were in Chicago.
Right, yeah.
We were in Detroit, which is a very rewarding experience. We did like 4 screenings between Detroit and Port Huron, which I might have said wrong, so I'm sorry. But, a really rewarding experience we had there was we got to go to the Detroit School of Arts, which is really an amazing facility with amazing people working there. And we showed the film in front of like some 200 students. And
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, and after the film, I mean, they all sent really great messages to Caleb and I about how they were inspired by the film and inspired by him. And then those students got the full experience. They got to hear Caleb speak. They got to do the Q&A. And we also made sure it was accessible and made sure to have subtitles, and that also made it all the difference. And yeah, I mean, people reached out to us again saying how inspired they were, and that's one of the more rewarding experiences. And after Detroit, I mean, we're back in Iowa now. We have some screenings coming up in Iowa, and screenings coming up or in Iowa throughout the year. So we're still putting, tour dates on the calendar, but we like to take it nationwide. We're not discriminating against the size of the audience. I mean, before we went to California, we went to Jefferson, Iowa, to that small community. And they have, that theater there has the best popcorn I've ever had. Yeah, man, that is the best popcorn.
Jefferson, Iowa.
Yeah, Jefferson, Iowa, the
My
best
wife
popcorn.
is from Jefferson, Iowa, so I know. I've been to that movie theater before.
Yeah. I mean, it's wonderful.
Small town.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful family that runs it. But yeah, their popcorn was amazing. But the film experience there was amazing too. So again, we're not discriminating, rural communities, big cities, but also what we really want to do, and what I know Caleb's really passionate about, is getting in front of young people, getting in front of young creatives like we did at the Detroit School of Art. Because that's who I made the movie for at the end of the day, was for young people to see Caleb and see his work and know that they can be themselves and persevere and do amazing things.
Yes.
They don't have to hide who they are, and they don't have to hide their traumas either. They could wear them on their sleeve and still make it in this life.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed just kind of following on social media. Like you said, you're in California, and then you're in, small town Iowa, whatnot. And I like the fact that, you're not just trying to stick to the big cities or the big population towns. You're going to the small towns because they need that, and they need to watch the film, and they want to watch the film. We talked about that over coffee. I was asking, how did you get to Carroll, Iowa? How did you get to over here? So that's kind of my next question is, the amount of buzz that's going on with your film, how has it just blossomed so quickly?
So where I premiered it was, I premiered the film in September at the Okoboji Writers Retreat. That's a retreat that happens every year. It's put on by Julie Gamick, a longtime journalist. And, hundreds of people, writers from all different mediums from across the United States attend that just to learn from each other, to network. And it really is an awesome 3-day experience in Lake Okoboji. So I definitely recommend people look it up. But yeah, that's also where I met Caleb. Caleb and I met there 2 years ago, and I got to know him over the years. And then, now we have this film. But so I showed it there, and people from across Iowa also attend that writers retreat. And everybody was they were blown away by the film. I mean, everybody, it was the talk of the retreat, and people came up to me nonstop, sending me messages, emails saying, I need this in my town. I need to get this at my library. I need to get this at my local high school. So I've been very fortunate, very blessed in that way, that this film is resonating that way with people, to where they're like, hey, people in my neighborhood need to see this. They need to hear this message. I think that's the biggest thing, is the message of the film. And yeah, I mean, it's really taken my breath away. I'm so happy. I'm happy beyond words. And again, it's created more opportunities to not only share it with communities all over, but to share it with young creatives all over, and more young people, to show them what's possible.
When I was, of course, following on social media, I was thinking the other day, I'm like, is he going to be able to, come on the show? Because you're so busy. You're so, just, going to different cities and touring, which is awesome. And I was going to, kind of let you know, hey, we can kind of postpone this because I want to make sure that you keep doing what you're doing, because I'm just happy the fact that I'm like, man, he's over here now. He's in Chicago. But
I wouldn't miss this opportunity for the world.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But man, you're out there, you're out there, and that's awesome. And I kind of want to touch back on the smaller towns. I think that sometimes we do overlook smaller towns. I think it's so by default it's so easy to just focus on the big urban cities, right? The Chicagos, the New Yorks, and the LAs and whatnot. But there's a lot of people that are interested even in small towns, and there's a lot of connections in small towns too, And even as far as my program, we do the math, 24/7. That's something that I want to eventually do is to hit up, start going to the rural areas, the rural towns, the small towns, because they want to learn more about bullying and anti-bullying programs and character building programs. And, sometimes they don't get the funding as urban schools or, bigger, cities may get. So they miss out on a lot. Mm-hmm. So, I definitely want to do a shout out to, small towns across America because they're important as well, and it's important that, we get out there, even as far as African Americans, come on, just kill some of those, eliminate some of those stereotypes and just to go out there and just to, communicate and, to go to those different communities, smaller communities, they want us to come out there, and not just saying just African Americans, but just in general, they want to be exposed to more things. I'm not saying they're not, but to be able to being intentional as far as like you're doing, going to the smaller cities and networking there and word of mouth is huge, man. Mm-hmm. Word of mouth is huge.
Yeah, word of mouth is carrying the tour right now. I mean, people. Like I say, you just never know who's at one of these screenings. I get people at these screenings that are from San Diego. I'm talking to people in San Diego about doing screenings there. You've got people connected to different film festivals, and they're just like, man, we got to get this in this film festival.
Yeah.
Or we got to figure out a way to show it around the film festival. So yeah, word of mouth, but yeah, just never underestimating your audience, never underestimating rural towns. Especially, specifically in my case, rural Iowa. Iowa. We'll be in rural Iowa pretty soon, and we have some screenings there. And again, those are people that reached out to me and said, hey, we need to get this film here.
That's good. That's good that you mentioned that. They reached out to you, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I don't want to go into the whole politics, but, just don't underestimate small towns.
No.
So,
well, and then just in greater Iowa, there's just a great journalism community that we all support each other, and there's just a great arts community too. There's so many great artists just in the Des Moines area alone, and when I meet these artists or other filmmakers, other creatives here, they want to be here and they want to help, and it's always everybody's helping each other.
Right.
And that's the kind of community that helped Caleb become who he is now, and then it's helping me grow and establish this tour and establish this film as something, as something with some longevity.
Mm-hmm. So just a few more questions, but what has been one of the most rewarding, experience, or just what's been just overall just the most rewarding, thing being able to tour and just, the questions that are being asked during the Q&A and the responses that you receive and, interacting with people out, after the Q&A. So what has been, the most rewarding part as far as being on tour?
Yeah, on tour, we're realizing that, again, back to what we said before, it's like people, when we're showing it in these big cities and also in these rural towns, so people from the big cities and to the rural towns are loving the movie. And people of all ages, all backgrounds are finding inspiration in the movie at some point, and that's been very rewarding. Even from the first time I premiered it in September, people were walking up to you right away talking about, experiences they've dealt with racism, or even experiences of people they know, racist things happening in their neighborhood and how they wish it could change and how they believe, the message of the movie is important and could be an intricate part in changing that. Another rewarding part, again, is just getting it in front of young people. Showing it to those kids at the Detroit School of Arts and getting the reception we did there. Mm-hmm. Because that's the biggest thing. I just wanted it to resonate with them, and those kids there are really talented. So for them to like it and find power in it, it meant a lot for me. It was an honor for me. But no, just people walking up to me after saying, again, how inspired they were, how they felt the inspiration throughout the film, and how inspired them in all kinds of different ways to do different things and to share with each other and have important conversations about acceptance and identity. That's what it's all about. So.
Okay. So you did mention before the show you're going to be in California probably for about a good month. Out there, touring out there and doing some other things. But I'm going to still ask this question because I know you're busy right now touring it, with the Negro artists. But what's next? What do you think what's next for the 7 times?
Again, what's next for the 7 times? It's just more stories, multiplying the impact too in different ways, growing the team. Mm-hmm. I think, I like to have a team of good people around me. I've been real fortunate to have great friends and great supporters here in Iowa that have helped me push it forward. But I love to get a team of young people around me to help keep me honest on my work and help spread the message more and get into more cities.
Yeah.
And reach more, Black entrepreneurs and tell stories for people. It's tough being an entrepreneur. Sometimes you don't always have a marketing budget, and then or you have to rely on your cell phone, to talk about your business. And I want to be able to give people, a high quality production telling their story. And, my videos are not marketing videos. It's, again, these are stories about Black entrepreneurs, but it's just, that's another rewarding part away from the film. The rewarding part about the 7 times is like, when I hit send on the video, put it on social media, and one of the businesses reaching out and talking about how much they love the videos. I mean, that's like, I'm just like, yeah, that's great. I mean, because I know what that feels like. It's encouraging for them, and it's uplifting. And so no, just keep amplifying the videos, spread it to different cities. Build a nice bigger team around me, and also provide some educational opportunities to young storytellers to show them that they can be themselves, tell the stories that they want to tell.
And that's just a question that just came to mind. If you had an opportunity to speak with the youth right now, how would you, and they may have an interest in film or the arts, what would you say to encourage them?
I would just say, don't get in your own way and be yourself. I mean, whatever fear that you're feeling is not real. People get so wrapped up in what would happen if they try versus the reality of if they don't try. If you don't try, the story's never written, the movie's never made, the video's not. And so that's like objectively true, is that if you don't try, it never happens. Versus if you try, if you make that film, then you're a filmmaker. If you write the poetry, you're a poet. If you write the book, you're an author. I mean, point blank period. Whether it's good or not is subjective. Yeah. But you got to just do the thing. And that's one thing I would, tell young people is just, get out of your head and do the thing. Yeah. Because, you can't underestimate how you can hold yourself back. And how you could be your worst enemy at times. I was going to say that we can be our biggest enemy. Especially as entrepreneurs. Yeah. I mean, when the realities of being an entrepreneur, hit, I mean, that's really how you figure out who you really are. And again, you got 2 options. It's either you're going to do it or you're going to try, or you're not. And your option B is if you don't do it, then it's never done. It's never done. And then, I mean, that's just objectively true. Right. Versus, I mean, and then, you just can't waste your time. And that's another thing I tell young people, just don't waste time. I mean, we waste so much time wondering if someone's going to like what we do. I mean, especially as a creative, not only as just an entrepreneur, but as a creative, you worry so much about, is so-and-so going to like it? Is so-and-so, but those people are imaginary in your head. They're not real. What's real is if you do it or not. You're talking to me right now? But no, I mean, that's just something I've learned the hard way. I mean, sometimes I feel like I could have made this movie years ago, and of course you get into the butterfly effect, but it's like, man, if I had some more self-confidence in myself, I could have been laying the groundwork for this years before. And in some ways I was, in some ways life was laying the groundwork, and I did learn some tough lessons along the way that have shaped who I am now as an entrepreneur and who I am as a creative. But still, thinking back, I'm like, man, if I would have just had a little more self-confidence. So just, again, that's one thing to tell young people, is to just be confident in yourself, who you are has value, and just, don't get in your own way. Just do it. Just do it. I like that. Yeah. Now you have some upcoming dates in Iowa. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Okay. Yeah. You might want to share to the camera upcoming dates, or? Yeah. So on February 20th, we're going to be at the Knoxville Library. I believe that screening starts at 6 p.m. On the 21st in the afternoon, we'll be in Iowa City. And then later on, we'll be at 7 p.m. We'll be in Burlington, Iowa, at the Capitol Theater there. And on the 22nd, on that Saturday, we'll be in Carroll, Iowa, at the Carroll Public Library. Caleb will be there doing his poetry workshop, and then we'll go through the full experience, which is, the spoken word poetry, the film screening, and then the Q&A discussion to follow. Okay, so for the last question, is to do the math 24/7. The math equation question. So this can be anything, anything that's you're thinking, or anything that comes to mind. But as far as a math equation, what is something that you can add, you can subtract, you can multiply, and by doing that equals to what? One thing I'm going to add is supportive people, more supportive people in my life, and subtracting. Definitely going to subtract fear and doubt. I mean, fear and doubt, that's just going to kill, fear and doubt kills your ambition, wastes your time. So just totally eliminating that. I'm going to multiply my consistency, and that's not just as a professional and as an entrepreneur, but consistency in all things, consistency in personal relationships, consistency hitting the gym, consistency eating healthy. And what that will equal to is a magnified impact. A magnified impact of the 7 times, the film experience, and a magnified impact of the messaging behind it.
I like that. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. Now, how can people get in contact with you or learn more about as far as what you're doing on social media?
Yeah. So you can follow us at the Negro Artist Film Experience. That's our at the Negro Artist Film Experience on Facebook and Instagram. For my production company, I'm the7times.com. That's the numeral 7times.com. And on my social media for the 7 Times is where I post my series on Black entrepreneurs. So I have a couple of stories coming out about some Black entrepreneurs that are in the Iowa City area. Mm-hmm. And then, the Negro Artist Film Experience is where I'll be posting the updated dates for the screenings. Also, some highlight videos from our screenings and more information on how you can contribute to the screenings as well. Okay.
Yeah, definitely keep posting, keep us updated, and this, it's always a win when I see what you're doing. I'm just like, yes.
Hey, likewise.
Yeah, I like what you're doing. So, definitely keep it up. Is there anything else, final remarks you want to share with the audience at all? Or as far as, people that may have an interest to come to one of your shows or anything you want to share, it's up to you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, check out the Negro Artist Film Experience. It's an experience that you definitely won't forget. I mean, it sticks with you. It's not like a TikTok or
it's not a TikTok?
It's not a TikTok, or it's not something that you're just going to see for 5 seconds and then forget about 20 minutes later.
Right.
It's a film that will stick with you for days and days and make you think about how you're, impacting the world. And so please definitely catch one of our screenings if you can, and definitely support Caleb Rainey and everything he's doing on all the community work that he does for young creatives. And yeah, that's all I got.
Okay, well, thank you again for bringing in the show. I definitely appreciate you taking the time out to come on the show, and definitely enjoy the vibe. Like I said, we met for coffee. It was a good vibe, and I just appreciate what you're doing. And thank you all for tuning in, for Do the Math 24/7's Math Talk. You can reach us or follow us on Instagram at Do the Math 24/7, Facebook at Do the Math 24/7. I'm on LinkedIn, Kenny Lilly, last name Lilly, Lilly. And again, thank you for joining us for another episode of Math Talk. And remember, do the math 24/7.